What is going on, guys? So today we're going to be doing something on this white Jeep, again, that I've not filmed on the channel, which is surprising. Very surprising, because we pretty much filmed every Jeep thing there is to film, but we're actually going to be replacing the fuel pump as well as the fuel tank skid plate, which we have a brand new one right there. And I don't think I've ever shown you guys how to do this particular repair, but doing the fuel tank is actually pretty easy. These come out pretty simply. You've got darkness, so you can't see anything, but there is a power wire right here. There is the evap line right here and the fuel line right here. Those three things are the only things that are connecting it to the truck. And then the fuel filler neck, we'll have to pull that out as well, but that's pretty easy. And then there's 3 bolts on the inside, 4 bolts on the outside, and we'll be able to drop the tank. So I'm going to set you guys up on the tripod and we will get to doing that. All right, so the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to disconnect our electrical connection to the tank, which there's just this little red tab that is annoying as all get out. And the only way to really get it out of there is with a screwdriver and some blunt force. So we're going to grab flat tip and we are going to pop this little red tab, hopefully, if we can get it. Hey, look at that. This Jeep is very surprising in the fact that although it was heavily rotted on the frame, everything else is perfect. So having a hard time with that, but we'll just pull that plug out and then I'm going to go ahead and try to twist our evap line off of here, which sometimes you can do without pliers, but we're going to need a set of pliers. Let's go grab a set of pliers. I should probably have prepared much better than I did, but for the most part this goes pretty easy. So all we're going to do now is just grab a hold of this hose, twist it. I should be able to pull that right off of there. Yeah, we're good now. It's coming. You guys can't see because my hand's in the way. But we'll get that hose off of there. There's that one. And then these little plastic retainers here. See if I can get you guys in a little bit closer to this. On these little plastic fuel fittings, they're pretty easy to get off. There's a tab at the bottom and a tab at the top. And most times you can just squeeze them and you'll hear a little click. Once you hear that little click, this line should pop right off of here. So let's see. Yep, it's coming. And just watch out for spraying fuel. There we go. So that came right off, and you always want to check inside here after you've taken it off just to make sure that your O-ring is intact. Because if you put this back in and the O-ring has come out, which sometimes they stick to the end of the fuel line here. If they come out, when you put this back together and turn the fuel pump on for the first time, it's going to spray everywhere. All right, so now that we've got those disconnected, what we're going to do is go ahead and lower the truck, or the Jeep, not really a truck per se. But we're going to lower this thing down so that we can get to the fuel filler, because we got to take this off of here. So I'm going to lower it down and bring you back when we got that done. Okay, now this is pretty easy. It's just 4 Phillips head screws that are right down inside of here. Get you in a little bit closer. It's usually 4 Phillips head screws. On occasion, I've seen 7mm bolts, 8mm bolts, Phillips head screws, flathead screws. It all depends on whether or not this is broken or if somebody's replaced it with like a Quadratech piece or an aftermarket piece or something like that. But take the 4 screws out. And then once we get the 4 screws out, we'll make sure that this moves pretty freely. And you can already see it's kind of moving around in there. and then I like to just give it a little push and set it down behind there, because what that'll ultimately do is avoid the issue when you go to pull this thing down, when you pull the tank down and it gets stuck up in here and it can crack this plastic, and then you got to replace that plastic. Okay, so we have the tank supported with our transmission jack, and now we're going to go ahead and remove the 7 13mm bolts holding the tank in, and if we're lucky, we won't break any of them. We're at 4 so far. We're doing good. Five. Ooh, might get lucky on this one. Okay, we'll come up under here. Grab that one. Wow, there's 6. And 7. Boy, did we get lucky. Now that we got those out, one of the things that can help you quite a bit in getting this out is if you take this little plastic flap right here, pull it out and down, and then you kind of just stuff it up around the frame here, and then you can get up in there and see if you've got the dreaded ground wire connected to this stuff, because if it's connected, you're not going to get it out. And then also there's a zip tie in here that connects, and I don't know if you guys will be able to see it. Let's see if I can get you up in here. But there's a zip tie way up in there that connects the vent tube for the rear axle to the pipe for the fill neck. So we're going to need to go ahead and cut that zip tie, because if we don't, we're going to have a nightmare of a time getting this tank out. So let me get up in there and cut that. We'll be right back. Okay, so the zip tie is cut, fuel neck is done, wires are disconnected, hoses are disconnected, fuel lines disconnected, all 7 bolts are out. So now all we have to do is start lowering the tank. And we're going to say a little prayer. Oh, look at that. Look at all the acorns. All right, we're going to say a little prayer that this thing doesn't have 15 gallons of gas in it. But once you get it to a certain point, you're going to have to start working the fill neck out and getting that to release itself from the body, which can be a little bit tricky. So be careful doing this part of it. Then you can fold it over on top of the tank and then finish lowering your tank out. And there we go. There's the fuel tank, my friends. All set and ready to go. Doesn't feel like it's got too much fuel in it. So we're gonna pray that it doesn't. And what we're gonna do now is we'll clean off the top of that tank, because it has all sorts of crazy stuff on it. We're gonna clean all that off because we don't want that dropping down in the tank when we do the fuel pump module. And we gotta pull these straps off of here. We gotta get the tank out of the skid plate, get it in the new skid plate, and then we'll do the fuel pump and all that other stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and do that now. All right, so the law of averages basically states that if you're gonna do a fuel pump, the fuel tank's gonna be full. And that's exactly what we ran into here. So what we did was we went and hooked up a hose to the fuel pump, and then my jump box to power the fuel pump, and then 3 gas cans to empty this out. So as soon as we get this thing emptied out and cleaned up, I'll bring you guys back and I'll show you pulling the fuel pump out. Okay, so here's where you can find out some interesting information. So now, this guy had a fuel problem with this thing. He said he would get down to about a half a tank and then all of a sudden it would run out of gas. And we still have, yeah, there's probably 2 or 3 gallons, 4 gallons in there maybe. And listen. I don't know how well you can hear it, but there are tons and tons of air bubbles in the fuel system right now. So I think that might have been part of his problem. His pump was probably going bad years ago, or it's got a sock that's bad or something, but we'll take it apart and check it out in a minute. Okay, so now that the tank is empty, the next step is going to be to get the tank straps off. Now you're going to want to make sure that you find some halfway decent lubricant like WD-40 or PB Blaster or Croil or anything like that, and just kind of spray these down. They do have a rubber covering over them that gets full of water and ultimately rots. Again, weirdly enough, these are in good shape. So 13 millimeter, come right off. There we go. You can hear all the acorns and stuff falling out of it. So now that we got the straps, we can take those out of here. You just kind of lift them up and then wiggle them around, get them broke loose from the other side, get them out from under this hose. And then you kind of have to maneuver them a little bit so that you can snag them out of the actual skid plate, which isn't too horrible. And of course our tank is moving all around here. So we'll get the other strap out. So the last thing we need to do now is get our electrical connector off of the actual skid plate, which if it's rotted, the whole connector will come off with the plastic stuff intact. A lot of times it doesn't, like that one. So now that we got that off of there, we can actually lift the tank right out of the skid plate. Just like that. And we can take our old skid plate and throw it in the garbage because it is terrible. And then we can take the new joint, put it up on there. And of course, take off the miles of plastic that Mopar puts on these things. And guys, these skid plates, you can get them right off of Rock Auto, and they're genuine Mopar, so they fit, unlike a lot of other aftermarket stuff out there that tends to not fit real well. The Mopar stuff fits perfectly, as it should. Make sure that we're putting it in properly. And once that's in there, we can go ahead and get our straps back in. Make sure. I usually like to tighten these down to where they were and then just back them off, because what can happen is it'll actually pull this whole section into a position where you can't fit it back up in the truck. So you'll have a lot of difficulty lining these holes back up. So I like to crank them down just to get them set in place and then loosen them back up until you get everything back up in the truck, and then you could tighten these two back up and cinch down the tank. All right, so now all that is done, and we're gonna go ahead and do the fuel pump. And we're gonna start by blowing this out again. Watch your eyes. We don't want any trash getting down inside of the tank when we pull the pump out. So we're going to make sure that there's no trash. Now, I found that the easiest way to get these rings off of here is to literally use a screwdriver that doesn't have too sharp of a tip on it, and then just a heavy hammer, because a small hammer just wants to chip away at it, but a heavy hammer will put a little bit of torque into it and you'll be able to break it free. So we're going to use our blunt little snap-on screwdriver and see if we can get this to move. No, we need something a little bit more blunt. This is just cutting into it. So let's find something with a blunt object and see if we can get it that way. Which we might not be able to, so we may have to resort to something else here. But let's keep trying. And we moved it a little bit. Okay, here we go. Now you take that ring up and off. And then again, before we crack that seal, let's just go ahead and give it one last little toot with the air gun. There, now we know we're not getting any garbage down in the tank. I'm gonna break the seal. There we go. And pull the pump out. All right, so now that we got the pump out, we're gonna go ahead and kind of just let that drain in there a little bit. We're gonna grab the new pump and compare. Wow, you guys should see the mud that just came out of this thing. And for the most part, they look identical, same height, same sending unit. Sock is much bigger. Wow, look at that. See how black that is? No wonder it was drawing so much crap. So we're gonna check this tank out real quick. So we're gonna wanna pull the old gasket out because the new pump comes with one. And this pump, just so you're aware, it does have an arrow on the top of it that denotes forward. If you do not install the pump properly, your fuel level gauge will not work properly. So you do have to ensure that you're putting everything in correctly. And so now we're gonna go ahead and just put this gasket in first, because if you notice, our pump almost seems like it's spring loaded, and it is. So if we get our seal in there first, make sure the seal is set correctly and that it's not off on another planet somewhere. Again, ensure that your arrow, and you guys can't see it, but there's an arrow and then there's two lines on the tank. You can line everything up with that. We're gonna take our ring, put it over top of the fuel lines and get it over top of the pump here. And then now we can position the pump, slide it down into our rubber gasket, making sure to keep our arrow aligned. Just be sure that the seal Sometimes it'll take a little bit of effort to get this down in here. So what I like to do is take the butt end of a hammer and just tap it in. And once you've made sure that you're in all the way, you want to look around and make sure that the seal all the way around here is still in the horizontal position, because sometimes that gasket will roll down into the tank and you'll end up with a world of leaky issues. And now comes the fun part. These do not like to go back on, so your best bet is to roll it backwards like you're taking it off until you feel it drop into the first set of threads. And I think we're right there. Okay, I just spared you the 20 minutes it took me to get that thing set right. Unreal, these things. But now we're just gonna give it a little snug. Make sure it's nice and tight on there. And then once we do that, we can run our electrical stuff back out. You guys can't see a damn thing I'm doing right now. And then we're gonna snip our electrical back into here. We take our fuel line, and off of the old one, we need to remove this little blue clip right here. We have to put that on our new pump. So those you need to be a little bit ginger with, and grab yourselves a small screwdriver, which I put away, and that's why I can't find it. Literally just take a small screwdriver, and you guys can't see it, but you just have to pop the tab up. Come up over, do that on both sides, and that'll pop right off. And then you can take this and go boop, pop it right back on. Take your fuel line, and again, remember I said check your O-ring to make sure that it's intact, and this one is. Click that back on. Take our old fuel pump that was full of dirt and trash, put it on the flow, and now we're ready to move this tank back over to the vehicle and put it back into the Jeep. So let's knock that out. Okay, so again, just remember that you have your filler neck to contend with, and you're gonna have to kind of guide it back up into the section where it goes, and it comes up over the frame. So what you want to do is, like we did before, we're just going to tuck it on top of the tank, and we're going to start lifting the tank up. And as we get the tank up, we're going to lay the filler neck against the frame, and as we come up, we're going to guide the filler neck between the frame and the body, because if we don't, we're going to have a nightmare getting everything back together. All right, so we got the filler neck in where it needs to be. Start moving the tank up. Make sure, again, manipulate the filler neck. Get that up in there. Keep going up. And then you can kind of position the tank where it's going to need to go. And this helps if it's empty. If it's not empty, you're going to have a hell of a time doing this. And we want to make sure, again, our filler neck is clear. And we can look up in here and see that, yes, our filler neck is clear. It's not touching or hitting or catching on anything. And now we can start trying to line up all of our 4 holes, which you won't be able to pull the tank towards the driver's side until the filler neck is in place. So it's now at this point where it's almost all the way in. You can pull the tank over enough to get the bolts up in there. All right, so we got the rears lined up. Come up a little bit. Now we'll make sure fronts are lined up. They're close. There we go. We'll come up a little more. And now we just got to make sure that all of our studs are located, and they are. So we're good there. We can take the filler neck, bring that up back into its location. That fits good. And we can kind of close up our little plastic back here. Now we can put our 7 bolts back, or 7 nuts back on the studs, and then we're done. So we're about to run out of battery on the camera, but all we have left is to reconnect our electrical, reconnect our fuel line, reconnect our evap line, 4 screws back in the filler neck, put the 7 bolts up in to hold the tank, and that's it. We replaced the tank skid plate, we replaced the fuel pump, and we put everything back in the vehicle. So, all right, so overall, it's a pretty easy process. It's something that doesn't take a whole lot of time, and because the Jeep is so tall to begin with, you can even do this job on your back. Now, unfortunately, you're not gonna have the nicest of time doing and removing all of the nuts off the studs. 9 times out of 10, they break, they snap, they're rotted, you can't get the straps out, you can't. So you might as well just buy all of that hardware. If you're doing the gas tank skid plate, make sure you get all the bolts, all the nuts, and any other various hardware you think you may need, depending on how rusty your Jeep is. But overall, this is a pretty easy project. The only hard part about this is getting that stupid plastic ring off of there and getting the ring back on again. Everything else is a breeze. So they do make a special tool for that, but I don't do enough of them to buy the special tool. So I hope you guys found that video informative. I keep trying to do things that we've never done before on the channel, but that is how you do the fuel pump on pretty much a 97 to 06 Jeep Wrangler. They're all the same. Hope you guys enjoyed that one, and we'll see you on the next one. So if you would, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Make sure you watch the video all the way through, because a lot of times there's stuff in there you might miss if you're not watching the whole thing. But thank you all for watching so much, and have yourselves a great night.